All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our latest town hall and our second one here for 2019. My name is Andy Howes. I'm the Director of Retirement Planning here at Next Level. For those of you that listened before, welcome back. For those of you that might be joining us for the first time, thanks for tuning in. And here's the deal. We typically host a quarterly town hall webinar, and the topics really run the gamut. The purpose of the town hall is pretty straightforward. We see this as another way for us to continue to inform and educate our clients and also our networks. So with today's call, we're going to be talking about navigating senior living. This is a subject that impacts nearly every family on some level at some point in time. For this, we're fortunate enough to be joined by Pam Fody and Jenny Wagner of Vesta Senior Living. Pam and Jenny are elder care consultants, and they're going to bring us up to speed on the evolving landscape that is senior living. They will also be providing us with some helpful tips and education, allowing us to make more informed decisions for ourselves and or other loved ones. I'm going to turn over to them in just a moment, but in case, again, you're joining us for the first time, we always do this over the noon hour Central Time. Idea being that it can be a break from lunch, and we always, keep it around a half hour. So today's call will be no different, and always will, as always, I should say, we'll open it up for some question and answer at the end. There's an actual Q&A feature to type your questions in on the WebEx here, so we'll hold those for the end. This is being recorded too, so we'll be able to send this out to you for viewing and to share with others. All that said, I will now turn it over to Pam and Jenny. Ladies.
Thank you very much, Andy. Hi. Happy to be here. So we'll take the mouse here and we'll
turn over the controls to you.
Turn over the controls. That's dangerous, but we'll go with it. So like Andy said, we're elder care consultants, and Vesta Senior Network, we've been in business for 6 years, and in that time we've helped over 600 families find the best elder care, long-term care solution for their loved ones. And the reason we like to do things like this town hall meeting today is because we really pride ourselves in the education that we provide. And so often when people are in a situation where they need to understand long-term care, they have never done it before. Or if they have, they did it for, mom, and now it's dad or grandma who needs care.
Or we did it for our mom and dad, and now it's our spouse or husband's mom and dad. So it's a whole different set of circumstances.
So what we try to do is help people really understand their options by providing them the education that will help them to make choices that give them peace of mind. And because of the experience we've had doing this, we're really able to leverage our knowledge and help people understand what's right and wrong, and really help people understand how to get what's best for their loved ones. So
the big part, the part of this that makes education so important is that when Pam and I give our education out in the world, which we pride ourselves on, we ask people what they think of long-term care
and what that means to them. And very frequently we have the hecklers in the back of the room saying things like, "That's expensive, 1 foot in the grave, Fox Farm." And honestly, Jenny and I didn't know what the Fox Farm was until someone told us that that's where old horses go to die. And we surely want to help people understand that
this is a misperception, and we all are handling this. We all have a connotation or a memory in our family backgrounds or the way we've brought up that makes us think that long-term care is one thing, and that it's the nursing home or the convalescent home or the Fox Farm.
Exactly. And honestly, that's true. 20 years ago, we really only had one option. No matter what you called it, whether it was the convalescent home, the old folks home, or the nursing home, it was what it was. And it was very one-size-fits-all. And like Jenny said, we all have memories of maybe when we went with the Girl Scout troop to sing Christmas carols, or maybe it was our own grandma or great-grandma sitting in the wheelchair with the lap blanket around the nurse's station, not much going on. And I think that it's fair to say that we all have a memory like that. But that was then. Now it's very different. And particularly in the state of Wisconsin, we're going to be addressing some common themes, but most specifically what we have to say refers to the state of Wisconsin, simply because every state does things differently. So if we have guests with us that are in different states, the most important thing, different states other than Wisconsin, the most important thing that I can impart upon you is to let you know that every state does it differently. From the licensing of their, say, assisted living communities or the types of care that they can provide, it's different. And that's what's really important. So if you're in California and you've helped someone, through this process in California, but now another parent is in Iowa, it's important to understand that what you learned about California is not going to be the same as what you're going to experience in Iowa or Wisconsin or another state, which is somewhat unfortunate. The skilled nursing facilities are regulated at the federal level because they take Medicare, but the assisted living communities and other elder care options are regulated at the state level. So the important thing to understand, like we said, is then it was one size fits all, which is a pretty universal truth. Now, no matter where you are, you have more choices and you have more options. So if it was a one size fits all then, now that we have all these different options, how do we know what size fits us? And when you look at this slide, you probably see, you see 12 bullet points. But what you probably see is maybe 5 different types of care, because we get to call things what we want.
The reason that there is certainly an explosion of people coming to the market with great products to care for people as we age is because we have this explosion of growth we have people living much longer. We don't die from our first heart attack. We don't die from our first bout of cancer. So we're all living longer. We're living healthier and weller because we have such great health care. And so we're looking at this and saying, wow, look at all these people who want great care. I can bring something great, and I can do something that's going to really be game-changing. Say Jimmy Buffett, he has senior living communities.
Margaritaville senior housing.
That we all can look forward to having a margarita. But the point is that we want the best care for our loved one. And so, yes, there's an explosion of great options out there, but we need to be savvy consumers and need to be able to understand what is really out there and what do these different things mean.
And the important thing to understand is that, an independent living community, a senior residence, a senior apartment, those are all the same thing. They're just called different names. In the state of Wisconsin, we have 2 different licenses for assisted living that mean different things based on the amount of care that can be provided, but RCAC, CVRF, memory care, those are all under the umbrella of an assisted living facility. A rehabilitation center, like Jenny said, as we have grown older and been healthier as we do it, someone might have an illness or a fracture or, have some sort of demise that they can come back from. So they'll go to a rehabilitation center, but that rehabilitation center actually exists inside a skilled nursing facility. And because fewer and fewer people are going to the nursing homes like they did once upon a time, many of those skilled nursing facilities are remodeling and, putting in fancy rooms and fancy rehab gyms, and increasing the number of rehab beds because people are going to the rehab center, they're recuperating, they're getting stronger, they're regaining their strength, and they're going back to whatever home is, whether that be an assisted living community, whether that be a senior apartment, whether that be the home that they've lived in for 50 years. People are not as frequently living out their lives in a skilled nursing facility, so the market is really changing. And then, of course, you have the continuing care residential communities, which encompass a lot of, the above on that slide. Maybe a senior apartment, maybe an assisted living, maybe a rehab center, maybe a memory care.
And those often are great choices when we're looking for care for a couple. Maybe they start out in an independent apartment, and maybe mom stays well for a very long time, but dad needs a little more care, and maybe some assisted living can come into their independent apartment for a little while, or maybe one of them moves on to memory care and one moves on to a higher level of care for frail elderly. There's choices there where they can be cared for the way they need to be, but still live on the same campus.
I think the most important slide in this deck is this one. Wouldn't you agree, Jenny?
Agreed.
This is really where the rubber hits the road. And this is what's hard, because no one has a crystal ball. If we had a crystal ball, if all of us had crystal balls, we would make all kinds of choices differently, right, Andy? I mean, we would have all kinds of opportunities because we would know what the end game was. But we don't have that. So the most important things that we can do for ourselves or for our parents or our loved ones is have an understanding when we're looking at, say, an assisted living community or some sort of elder care option. Understand what kind of care can be provided and what the cost is going to be and what is going to happen if I outlive my assets. Does this community that I'm looking at accept public funding, county funding, state funding? And if it does, how do they really administer it? Because the important thing to understand is that participation in public county funded programs is voluntary. So some communities may ask, or have an expectation that you can pay 1, 2, 3 years privately before you outlive your assets. Other communities may have an expectation that you never live out your assets. And if you do, they don't have a program that will allow you to stay there. So when you're looking at options, you need to make a sustainable choice from the care perspective, meaning the choice that you make, you need to understand that if my mom with dementia starts wandering, for example, that they're going to be able to take care of her, that they have a plan in place. Either they have a secure, building, or they have some sort of wander guard system, or if my dad is a big man, my dad is 225 pounds, 6'2", and he has a stroke, he might become a 2-person transfer. He might need 2 people to help him in and out of bed, or into his wheelchair, or to the toilet. Are they going to be able to provide that for him? And then ultimately, after we've decided, that we've figured out what's going to be right from a care and a cost perspective, now we need to look at the community and what is going to be right for my loved one. I always use the example of my grandma who died of Alzheimer's and my mother-in-law. And she doesn't know that I use her as an example, by the way, but that's okay. The point being is that my grandma who died of Alzheimer's, she was a blue-collar grandma. She had 9 children. She was a cook, not a chef. She cooked in a factory. She cooked in a nursing home. She cooked in a school. She sat at her kitchen table with coffee and her word search books or with a romance novel, and had a vinyl tablecloth for every holiday. Now, my mother-in-law, she's a country club lady. We call her Fancy Nancy. And the places that I would choose for my grandmother and my mother-in-law are going to be very different. That community feel, that vibe is going to, have a significant impact on how well they adjust and how well they assimilate into the community. Fancy Nancy's going to need a place that has, a dining room with cloth tablecloths and cloth napkins.
And
she'll dress for dinner. Whereas my grandmother, if that was the type of community that we had chosen for her, she would have felt like the house. So it's very important that we look at the person and their history when we're making a decision. You know, a lot of these places, they're building for us because as adult daughters or sons, because they know that we have such a significant part in the decision. So we can be very, very impressed by what's available, but we have to think about the person who's going to be living there ultimately, because they need to get the care that they need. We need to know that they need to be able, that they can be there through the end of life, and they have to, you know, they have to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bottom line, if you have care that works for you today and into the future, and it's something that is sustainable in terms of the financial piece of it, the community can then be a very easy part of it. It's kind of like college campus shopping, where does this feel right to me? Because there's certainly a lot of different choices and options out there with very different vibes.
So this is where the rubber hits the road, right? So let's talk about, in a nutshell, our options, the cost, and the sustainability of the decisions. So occasional in-home care, what does that mean? Well, occasional in-home care means 3 hours of care, 3 days a week. That's our definition. That's the VESTA definition. And I think it's important to point out that these dollars are southeastern Wisconsin dollars. These are accurate numbers for the type of care that you will pay for in southeastern Wisconsin. If you look at Genworth numbers, if you look at MetLife numbers, they publish them annually, they're going to look very different than this because they're a national average. These are averages for Wisconsin. So occasional in-home care at $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month, is affordable for a lot of people.
And it's really a great way for someone to be able to stay in their home longer. If we're starting to see that our loved one needs some help or is running out of gas, meaning they're just tired out and turning us down for some of the social engagements, or just not really wanting to do as much, that occasional in-home care can be that little help that can make a difference. Whether it be helping with the laundry so we're not going up and down the basement steps, or whether it be grocery shopping and cooking meals and popping them in the fridge so all they have to do is nuke it in the microwave. Those types of things can really help someone stay in their home longer and preserve their energy for the tasks, for the more fun things. Maybe it's going out to lunch, maybe it's cards with friends. But in-home care in that way is affordable to many people and can really help someone out.
Mm-hmm. And the important thing to understand is that this in-home care, this is truly supportive care. This isn't, a private duty nurse. This is a trained caregiver. This is someone who, in our example, works for an agency, so he has been fully vetted, has had background checks. The agency is basically managing the HR. They're paying taxes. They're doing all of that so that you don't have to worry about those things. But this is non-medical in-home care. Now, 24-hour home care or live-in home care, those are two very different things. So 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, occasional in-home care is sustainable unless someone starts needing assistance toileting, unless someone starts needing assistance in and out of a chair. But once that starts not being able to be scheduled, once you start needing someone around the clock, that all changes. So you have to look at, what your long-term financial sustainability is, not knowing how long you're going to live or not knowing how long your parent is going to live. So that is when you need to start looking at options. So the live-in home care, that assumes for $100,000 a year, that assumes that your caregiver can sleep at night, that your loved one is not up multiple times a night, and that someone can basically have the energy to take care of that person during the day.
And let me interject that in those cases, we need to be able to provide that person with a place to sleep, a bathroom, those types of things, so that they do take some time off.
They do take some time off, yes. 24-hour home care, that is someone awake in the house around the clock. Maybe someone is at a point in their dementia or their illness that they have their nights and days confused, or they're just not sleeping well, and they need to be up and toileted multiple times a night. So now you've got a big difference because you've got an awake in-home caregiver around the clock.
Probably shifted staff that's going to be
Right.
there, so that no matter what time of the day or night it is, if that person needs help, it's there.
And ultimately, the decision, comes for every family. How long can I sustain this expense? And I use the example of a gentleman that I was working with for a period of about 3 years, and his goal was to stay in his home. And he had considerable assets, and his home was worth about $350,000. So the plan that we put together was, when he was down to $50,000 in liquid assets, then he would move into an assisted living community, because he figured that would be, maybe about the time it would take to sell his home, and then he would have his home to use for assisted living. And it worked out great for that gentleman. He never got down to that $50,000, and he was able to stay in his home until he died. So it worked for him. But he had a plan in place, and I think that is the most important message, is if you are going to maybe honor your parents' wishes. So many of us have heard, I promised Mom that I would never put her in a home. That's all great as long as you have an exit strategy, I guess, is the best way to look at it. And then ultimately, skilled nursing care is very costly and not typically what people need. So really exploring your options that exist where you live or where your loved one lives is really beneficial.
In Wisconsin here, being in a skilled nursing facility or a nursing home costs anywhere from $10,000 to $14,000 a month. And in contrast, assisted living is anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 or $9,000 a month. And frankly, that's half the money. So, in assisted living, you're in a wonderful environment compared to being in an institutional environment of a nursing home. And so it's half the money, and it's better for you. It's less depressing. It's home-like. So assisted living certainly has been something that has, taken control of the market and is where people would like to be. And the other big piece of the puzzle is that assisted living affords you social interaction, friends, and being with people. And that has a lot to do with how well we age.
So how do we pay for this? Well, like anywhere in the world, cash is king. So private pay dollars are what give you your options. So the planning you do with your financial advisor as to how this is going to look, or if you're thinking about this for your parents, really looking at their nest egg, looking at things like, what kind of investments do they have? What kind of savings do they have?
Or if they have a lot and we've already put some of it in a trust, or we've
Right.
done some planning, that is a wonderful thing to make sure that you've done very well with your planner. But make sure you set aside a small nest egg specifically for care, because so often what we're talking about here today, the private pay or the money you have before you would run out of money is your power of choice to help you get into a better place. And so if you want to not have to be in a nursing home or not have to be in not the best place, you certainly, if you have 2 years of private pay, if you have 3 years of private pay, that's going to be something that you want to, in your planning process, make sure you set aside for, this is our long-term care fund, the rest can go to the kids in our legacy, or that sort of angle, and I'm certain that the Next Level folks will help you out with that.
Right. And we are not financial advisors, we're not attorneys, and we don't play them on TV either. So we're going to, refer you to the experts in that, but we always like to say, make sure that your planning includes, some private pay dollars to help you get what's best, because the race to Medicaid is not one that you want to win.
Sadly, when folks are already on Medicaid, the choices are not the ones we want.
And unfortunately, sometimes people with great assets get bad advice, and they lock up too much of their funds and end up in situations they don't want to be in. Something that's really important to know is that if you or your loved one were a wartime veteran, there is a wonderful benefit called the aid and attendance benefit that can be accessed through, in Wisconsin, every county has a veteran service officer. Otherwise, you can, through the VFW or American Legion, you can look into this benefit, and it really helps people, stretch their private pay dollars. Long-term care insurance, again, I'm sure that you're talking, with your financial advisor about how that looks, how it works, what's the best vehicle.
Not everyone has it, but it can really be a wonderful benefit in terms of, if you do need care, opening up choice and having a much easier way to pay for these things.
And that's, again, another conversation to have with your financial advisor. Does it make sense to have long-term care insurance? Does it make sense to have a plan that you're going to self-insure? How are you going to do that? And then ultimately, there's Medicaid, which is Title 19. And depending on the state that you live in, there are different programs within the Medicaid budget to help pay for your care.
Here in Wisconsin, we have family care, and that's what pays for assisted living here in Wisconsin, and so that's why we have that here on our slide.
The important thing to know is that participation in those programs, like we said earlier, is completely voluntary. So by that individual community. So it's important that you truly understand, if you're looking for your parent right now, that you fully understand what is available and how they utilize the benefit,
how they administer their Medicaid funds at an individual place.
So that's the end of the slides, Andy. We're happy to open it up for questions.
Yeah, no, thanks. That was excellent. And a special thank you to Pam and Jenny, because they did kind of give us their a shortened version of a typical presentation, because we wanted to keep it within that same time frame. So like Pam said, we'll open it up for some Q&A. Again, there's an actual Q&A feature, and so feel free to type in your questions. We will address them. I know I have. So I've been doing this for just shy of 17 years, and the amount of conversations, the frequency of those conversations has increased dramatically in the last 10 to 15 years, in large part for reasons that you alluded to earlier. We're living longer. Our healthcare is better. It keeps us alive longer. All those sorts of things. And whether it's clients themselves, whether it's our clients' parents having gone through this, or even just directly, a lot of us, myself included, have seen this happen with family members or in-laws or things like that. So these are conversations that come up quite a bit. So first question I have, so how do you know when, let's say it's mom or dad, for example, or because that's, like you said, usually the son or daughter has a significant role in the decision-making process. How do you know when someone might need this? This meaning like, some sort of senior care situation.
Well, I think statistically it's important to know that 75% of us are going to need something, because we're going to have the benefit of living long enough to need help. Now, what is that something? It could be that in-home care, like we talked about, the non-medical in-home care, the help with grocery shopping, meal planning, laundry. I think Jenny said it very well when she said that when things start, when you don't have time to do the fun things,
when you don't have any more gas in your tank is the way I tend to say it, but if you look at your energy level as the gas in your tank, and you're running low often, or you don't have enough energy even to get up and get dressed, much less get to that card game and lunch, it's having a little bit of help there so that you can get to the fun stuff. That, I think, tends to happen around when we're just needing a little boost, maybe some in-home care, you know, or some light RCAC, which is a lower level of assisted living, living in an apartment-style situation. Those kind of, you know, lighter care is that energy in the tank type thing. Then on the other hand, we do run into families that are, sadly, it happens to a lot of us, without us suspecting ahead of time, bam, we have a crisis. Mom or dad has a fall, mom or dad has a stroke, and now we're in a situation where they've been in the hospital for kind of a little bit, and now they're in rehab, and the word on the street coming to us from the doctors, coming to us from the social workers, coming to us from the OT and PT is that mom and dad are not really safe to go back home, and we need to figure out either bringing in-home care to their home so that have someone there for them, or that they look at assisted living. And that's the people that are kind of flung into a crisis situation and have to kind of act fast.
And
It's
sadly,
one of those two things usually.
yeah, sadly, most of our clients are coming to us in crisis because it's such a hard
Sure.
conversation to have. You know, no one really wants to have this conversation with mom or dad, and sadly, that's typically what happens. We have seen that it's frequently the third rehab stay, when finally the family throws their arms up, their hands up.
No, this is our new reality now.
Now we've got to do
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
and,
okay.
yeah.
Well, and on that note, so, okay, it's like, okay, we can recognize, because a lot of times it's like you recognize, or at least more than one family member recognizes, like, okay, that, you know, there is that need there, but, you know, you used the phrase earlier in your presentation, you know, we wanted to honor our parents' wishes, or I told mom I'd never put her home, you know, that sort of thing. So what if there's just, I mean, because this is met with resistance because of maybe some of the stigmas that exist or things like that. So if someone doesn't want, what's a good way to kind of bring this up if someone, you know, feels like, oh, that's not for me, that, you know, going back to like your earlier slides, that's for someone else, that's
Yeah.
for old people, that's
Yeah.
for, you know, what's the good way
Well,
to bring that up?
frequently, I mean, we always say, no one comes to the assisted living community with their bags packed, knocking on the door saying, let me in. That doesn't happen.
Nope.
So what we frequently say is get an authority figure involved, right? Because this generation, you know, there's still some World War II folks left. We're looking at maybe the silent generation, as it's called, which is more like the Korean War type vets. This generation has a lot of respect for authority. So who is the authority figure that you can basically get on your team? Who can you make an ally? Is it the pastor or the priest? Is it the doctor? Is it the financial advisor? You know, who does your mom or dad look up to enough to help with this process? Just yesterday or 2 days ago, I was giving someone advice because they were having the doctor appointment for their mom. I said, you need to fax in everything that you want that doctor to know, because when you're sitting in that appointment, mom's going to be like, it's great, I'm doing well, but you know that she shouldn't be alone anymore.
Sure.
So making sure that the doctor, for example, if that's the authority figure, has all the information that you think she needs to help you before the appointment happens, calling her nurse and saying, hey, I need your help,
Yeah.
and I just faxed this information in, and we need to address this at our upcoming appointment.
For their safety.
For their safety.
And then also, besides just bringing an authority figure in, go back to the thought process that we began this whole slide presentation on, is that most of us are thinking nursing home. Take the time to show that person, if however you can, what exists out there, the options, because most places these days are more like a cruise ship than a nursing home. And the social interaction is, most people don't want to leave their home of 50 years. However, for some, it can be pretty attractive once they see what is the option.
And truly, if you can do this before the third rehab stay, before the crisis is really such that this person is so sick and in such a decline, they have a better opportunity of actually enjoying it.
Taking
Sure.
advantage of it,
Taking a chance.
Acclimating.
Right. And
playing
taking-
cards with friends or
Right.
you know.
And
Sure.
a lot of times, people are actually, not a lot of times, most often, people are actually healthier once they get into this environment because, you know, people need people. So that social interaction is so vital to someone's health. And the fact that they're getting, you know, 3 squares a day, and that they're getting nutritious
Medication
meals,
on
medication on
Yeah.
right. And
Common interests,
Yeah.
just that alone.
Right.
You know, for sure.
Agreed.
people do better
With
not
people.
alone.
Sure, sure. Well, and also too, like, on the note of kind of addressing this too, like oftentimes, you know, the authoritarian figure, but there's also too, you'll see a lot of cases where, the siblings
Mhm.
are, the children of these, parents that might need the care, they're divided on
Yeah.
this. Or, you know, or there's an outlier or something like that. 'Cause you know, like you said, the son or daughter, you know, probably, you know, has one of the more significant roles in all this, to use your words. When there is a divided family, for lack of a better term, what's a good way to approach that
What is your example?
situation? And there may not be a good answer to this, I understand that.
Well, I've worked with a very divided family in my past, and then that ended up being where I had to deal with each sibling on a separate phone call to deliver the message and to walk them through each piece of this journey. But I think the best thing to do is to get the whole family in the room together. And even if we can do it with mom or dad, or mom and dad, or whomever, you know, the loved one, if we're all can agree that we love this person and we want them to be safe, or we want them to have some extra care in their home, whatever the topic may be, that we all sit down together, and if you can have someone who's an elder care consultant or some authority figure who can explain the options, help understand, there's a lot of fear, whether it be one of the brothers or sisters' fear, or mom or dad themselves. It's, let's uncover the myths, the problems, the things that we're worried about. Let's put this on the table, and then let's move forward. A lot of times it's one of the children either is concerned about money, or one of the children just doesn't want to let mom or dad down because they've made a promise that we've never put you at home. There are different ways to do it these days, and so if we can get everybody to sit down and say, yes, we love you, yes, we want the best for you, this person's telling us we could do it this way, X way, Y way, or Z way, that initial meeting can really fix the landscape and stop the family dynamics from causing more harm than help.
Oh, that's good. And then, are there times, you talked about authoritarian figures, you know, like the doctor, pastor, priest. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, but there are times when people probably even understand the finances, economics, even where they want to stay or where they want mom and dad to stay. Are people sometimes just like looking at you specifically to be that figure even? It's like, we kind of got all this, but hey, we just, you know, they need to hear this from someone that doesn't share the same last name as them, for
Yeah.
example. Is
We
that
call
kind of-
ourselves the objective daughters.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's exactly, Andy. Sometimes everybody, even the best families, right, have, you know, well, we don't listen to Susie because she's just Susie, or we
Yeah.
don't listen to, you know, Joe because he's Joe. That's Jenny's brother's name, so that's how we use that example. But, right, so bringing someone in that can say, I understand your concerns, and we've done this 600 times, and this is how it usually turns out, you know? It's
Yeah.
absolutely that we are brought in to be that.
Especially when
objective
I
voice.
explained that meeting situation, that launch pad, you know, helping everybody get on the same page.
Right.
And then mom and dad say, okay, I know they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because sadly, I mean, we're always going to be our parents' kids.
Yes.
So, we don't have a whole lot, you know,
No,
we're always
yeah.
gonna be their middle daughter, or their youngest son,
Yeah.
or whomever, and
So
so
they taught to ride
this
the bike.
world,
and
Right.
this is
whatever it is, sure.
a role reversal. So now we're like, Mom, Dad, I'm worried about you, just like the way you used to worry about me when I was a teenager and I was driving and things like
Yeah.
that. So that role reversal is not an easy thing to
Sure.
do. And so, helping the parents and the kids all get on the same page is a big piece of it.
Yeah, no, thanks, and thanks for bringing that up, 'cause, like, you know, I experienced that too, like on a much smaller scale, but it's helped me professionally talk to, you know, clients and doing their parents, like my dad would, like, you know, call me and say, like, hey, did you do this or do that? It's like really simple stuff, and at first I'm like, does my dad think that I'm an idiot? Like, does, you know, does he think like I don't want to do something? But then I was like, you know, and I have my own kids, like, oh, he's just being a dad.
Dad, right.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, so then it's like, oh, that is like, and that's always gonna be the case. I'm always gonna, on some level, probably view my kids as like, you know, the person you were worried about because they were out driving on their own for the first time, or you taught to ride the bike, or sent off to school, or, you know, and any number of things, and that doesn't leave you. And it's like, oh, you know, that was kind of my aha moment, that out there, that I've been able to carry over professionally. So, but no, it's probably a good way to end it. We still have Pam and Jenny's contact information up there on the screen for you guys. You know, obviously, they've been very helpful today, and they're extremely knowledgeable in this. So, you know, if this is a situation you find yourself in, you find other family members and or loved ones in, please, you know, by all means, you know, reach out to them. Their contact information is there. We again have recorded this, so we will be sending it out to you through our various channels. Thank you again today for joining us. Thank you again to Pam and
Thanks
Jenny
for
for
having
coming. Appreciate it. All right, thanks, guys.